It's alive.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
I missed it again. Didn't press it quick enough again. Too slow. And turn the volume down. Right. Click that button, click that button, click that button. Welcome back again, folks. It is another crackly sound as I adjust my headphones show, broadcast, podcast, episode, edition, blah, blah, blah. Pick a similar word, a simile, and you get the idea. Yes, we're back again. This moon day evening, sorry, I'm giggling and doing my usual while I'm trying to multitask and get Windows sorted on my screen. So I've got everything open and ready to go. Another edition of Sol Excalibre this moon day evening. You've got to do that branding. You know, you've got to repeat the branding. Another edition. It is a star date 3/6/2019, the 3rd of the 6th. That's the hardest one to say when you've got no teeth. The 6th. 6th. Sorry, blowing at you, blowing up your speakers. Saying hello in the chat room. Now I've got the chat room open. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Linda Cloud, hello. And Dave Iron, hello, hello. And the other two are usual suspects. They're already in the room, so they know already. Right then, why is that blinking at me? I don't know. Okay, ignore that then. Right, where did we get to? I'm saying where did we get to because I'm sort of jumping off other conversations that have been had recently and other bits of information and stuff. And tonight I wanted to mention a couple of things that are sort of like housekeeping. I've used that phrase often before in the past when I'm talking about things that I'm doing with the channel or ideas for shows and whatever, you know, things like that. But a couple of things I wanted to talk about, mention. One, a comment that was left by Earache last week on last week's show. And I'll come back to that later. And another one on a different video completely, not on one of my videos, but it's talking basically about things that I'm often talking about. And in that situation, again, it's something I'll come to later. As long as I can get through my notes fairly quickly, hopefully I'm going to try and progress quickly through them this week, for a change. More things change, the more they stay the same. I can say that, you know, and then it ends up being the same. It takes me ages to get to the conclusion. But yeah, there's stuff that I wanted to sort of reply or share into the chat primarily for people watching, and I will as and when I get the chance, either later tonight or tomorrow. I'll put links in the comments under this particular video, but they're just in relation to some of the stuff that's been a common topic of conversation recently, but has met this constant I'm trying to be careful not to be too degrading, because it agitates me, or it has built to an agitation to the point that now I just want to be derogatory to the people that keep perpetuating this childlike denial, because basically they're too afraid to actually look at the information and consider the ramifications of what they're seeing. It's the classic naivety of, oh, parents wouldn't do that to us, or government wouldn't do that to us. It can't be true. It's just a crazy conspiracy theory. But just some links I found that are worth sharing, because I thought they're, for those people that are stuck with that kind of naive denial, maybe they can help themselves. As we often say, I have said here many times on my show, I say it every so often, and on the reality chat when we're doing that on the Wednesday night, we said it a lot. Don't take our word for it. Go and look into things for yourself. And it's not just because I'm trying to convince you that you can't believe me. You've got to be careful who you believe, kind of thing. Don't trust anyone and anything you hear. You've got to go and check it for yourself. Yes, that's part of the absolute truth of that. But it's also the fact that you have to go through this process for yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. Nobody else can have your awakening and then go, oh, here you go, I've done it for you already. Here's the blueprint. You just copy exactly what happened to me and the same thing will happen for you. It doesn't work like that. So the repeating of that, what is in effect a mantra, because a lot of people suggest this to their audience, it's a good idea to keep repeating for people. Don't take our word for it. Go and look into things for yourself. And don't think that just because somebody's on a screen or stood on a podium at an event or a presentation or whatever, that doesn't mean that they're 100% accurate and trustworthy and fantastic and they've got all the answers and they know everything. People are fallible. People make mistakes. Things like that happen. Don't be naive into thinking they're not, just because you're a premium subscriber to the truth, as Daisy always put it so well. Just because you subscribe to somebody and you're paying for their newsletter or whatever that guarantees to tell you the secret info, it doesn't mean it's 100% accurate and trustworthy. Anyway, yeah, ranting aside about bookkeeping, housekeeping kind of stuff. I'll come back to that later. But let's get into the usual, like I do with these shows. A bit of an amalgamation of what's been going on through the week, combined with hopefully some bigger picture stuff of the changes that are occurring worldwide, globally, galactically, universally, because it reaches all the way to the top and the bottom. In the subtitle this week in the info box, I put I've got to remind myself because I can only see the one bit of it. Trumping the grilldeburg and we build the world. I'll come back to the you can probably guess the we build the world part of it. I'll get to that eventually towards the end of my rambling, ranting, and hopefully it's I've lost the chat room now because I've switched to that screen. There it is. Right, thank you. Hopefully that kind of statement is pretty obvious to most people. But anyway, yeah, trumping the grilldeburg. I mentioned it last week on Reality Chat channel on Wednesday night that we do 8 p.m. GMT. I mentioned the fact that they'd announced the Bilderberg meeting was happening last weekend and where it was going to be and all that lot, and all the usual suspects in the supposed alternative media were doing their thing, going out there, flying out there to go and track the Bilderbergers and find out what's going on. And I watched a few clips and it was pretty much like it has been for a few years, where they occasionally can encounter people. Sometimes you get that kind of ambush effect of they ask them a question and you can see the reaction on their face, or they might make a comment or whatever. But most of the time they're just no comment, don't want to talk, and they're on their way. So it's like you're not exactly seeing much of anything. It's not, it's not like they're standing there giving away all the secrets of their Chatham House meetings and stuff like that. That's not likely to happen, certainly not anytime soon. But that doesn't mean I think it's worthless monitoring that event. It's the same as a lot of those kind of events like Davos, where all the financial people, supposedly financial, but it's more than that, corporatism, commercialism, whatever, they have their meeting where they do pretty much the same thing. They get together and they have intimate conversations about how they're going to make more money in the following year, stuff like that. So these meetings, conventions, have participants from all over the world, from important areas of the structure of your society. Yeah, it's worth keeping an eye on. But it's not the revelation that is going to wake up the world kind of thing. It's not the smoking gun to reveal all of the truths of all the bullshit that's been going on. That again comes back to people need to do it for themselves, to go through their own process of learning, well, what is the Bilderberg? What's going on here? Why are all these people meeting? What's the history of this group? Where have they met in the past? What's happened in the world after their meetings? Does it correlate to stuff that was talked about in the meetings, or even just the simplistic lines that they give us to tell us what the topics were? Do you see effects in the real world the year or second year following? Important people who turn up there who seem to be going for their initiation process, where they go to the Bilderberg and then not long after they're suddenly getting more and more important positions in political circles, maybe even becoming a president or a prime minister or something like that. And the history of the group goes back further and further, and you see the connections from important people in that group itself, the steering committee and the original founders, etc., and how they connect into so many other enlightening areas of information and history and paper trail of evidence that shows, these are people that sort of, they believe, they think that it's their right to manage the world. And these little meetings that they've been having for many decades now, and if you connect it, if you leapfrog to other groups doing similar things, you can trace this back for centuries. They're the ones that are, messing. They're the ones pulling levers and pressing buttons in the back rooms of the facade of politics and corporations and big business and banking. They're poking and prodding, and I'm careful to not say causing things to happen, because you can end up in a long debate, a semantic debate about, well, did they actually cause it, or did they just suggest it and something else could? It becomes part of the problem, the plan to create quagmires of argumentation of, well, you can't absolutely prove it, mate. Well, no, because there's no chat, it's a Chatham House system, so therefore there's no records of them saying, yes, I agree to carry out that agenda because then it'll achieve these goals. Or that's not going to happen, is it? It's like asking for the fucking the stenograph records of the latest mafia don meeting of how they're going to have so and so killed and stuff. Right? It's not going to happen, is it? Not unless it's a mafia made up of the most stupid. So anyway, yeah, Bilderberg. The reason I called it Bilderberg, do loads of plays on words with that. The building, the builders, the billing. They are giving us all bills to live in the Berg, because Berg is a Germanic root word, I think, meaning house or home or village, somewhere, a dwelling, as far as I remember anyway. So it just came to me, the fact that, well, this has been happening for a few years now in the way that we're currently experiencing, where members of the independent press, call them that, will go and cover it, and they bring it to the public's attention, even if they get, their reach is subdued a little, the information is suppressed a little bit, until we've got to the stage now where now they've appropriated it, and they publish their attendee list, I should say, with the talking points and things like that. That never used to happen in the past. But this whole process of this sort of marketeering, it's a resource each year. You know, you compare it to the way a lot of the commercialized holidays seem to have come from out of nowhere, have no real genuine emanation from the culture that they preoccupy, but they become adopted into that culture such that now it's like a sequential process through the year. You'll have one holiday that leads into another, that leads into another, that leads into another, and the commercialized cycle that goes along with it. So one month you're buying stuff for Easter, the next month you're buying stuff for Mother's Day, the next month you're buying stuff for Father's Day, the next month you're buying stuff for Halloween. And this is all commercial circles, economic circles that have been created that not only give some members of society something to do, because the products that are traded have to be produced, the services that are provided have to be catered for, etc., etc. But it also, you know, because the two are required to make the system work, it creates a marketplace of consumers that want to buy the products that are being offered. So they've got to convince those consumers that, yes, this is actually part of your culture. You know, back in the olden days when the world began, we used to trade chocolate eggs to represent spring beginning. You know, did we really? Okay, yeah, but people think that that's, I shouldn't stereotype everyone in that box, but a lot of people think that, you know, it's just what you do. Because, you know, it's like what we do, isn't it? It's cultural. We do it every year. We've got to get some chocolate eggs for the kids and tell them about bunny rabbits and whatever. So it got me thinking, okay, we got that kind of correlation of this has become a kind of yearly, an annual thing that now occurs, such that it's got its own little sort of economic circle now established. Can we not then, you know, is there no corresponding counterpoint to the Bilderberg? Because I can't, there might be some out there already, but they're, you know, on the fringes so that you don't see much mention of them. But I don't want to think of things such as like Burning Man, because that's, yeah, part of the problem as well. But is there nothing that is sort of like, okay, well, if this meeting is all about these people that live in almost a separate world to the rest of the population, they live in these eclectic circles where they are isolated from the harsh realities of day-to-day life. Is there nothing that is sort of corresponding to that? So are there no gatherings of people that do things for the common good? It's going to be a lot of cheesy cliches and keyword phrases and whatever in this. So, you know, don't be afraid. But doing the good stuff for people, you know, actually making the time to want to do something that is not just to line their own pocket or their own kins, you know, getting their own friends and family business and trade and profit and what. Rather than that, is it not, you know, more the opposite to that? And what an opportunity is that for somebody to begin that kind of corresponding reflection of Bilderberg. Bilderberg is supposedly the great and the good, the movers and the shakers coming together to want to make the world better. But like I said, you go through your own process of discovering about these groups and these people, these individuals that are involved with it, and it's extremely debatable that the end result of what they are doing and what they claim to be about is actually beneficial, healthy, useful, is leading us to a good place. It's not. It's just perpetuating a lot of the problems. If anything, it's serving the purpose of informing and enabling those people who occupy those eclectic circles that think they rule us, the knowledge and ability and information to better control the rest of the population and therefore rule over them. That's long-winded. Hopefully people get what I'm saying. A lot of words in there. Word salad. Take your pick. So anyway, yeah, it had me thinking about why don't somebody do a grilldeburg? And I'm not trying to put myself out there to say, oh yeah, I'll organise something, because no, for many reasons. But just as an opportunity, it seems like, well, rather than all these people expending all their time and energy focusing on something that's been going on for a long time anyway, without you even ever knowing about it. I never found out about Bilderberg until the late 90s, I think, something like that, late 90s. But something that's been occurring for a long time that you weren't aware of up until recently for most people. And I'm not saying it should be ignored, not at all. Like I said earlier, it should be monitored. And if any good information, useful, usable information comes out, that's great. Keep that moving. Let people know, share that round. But giving people the impression that Bilderberg is so important and relevant, such that it warrants this annular focus of extreme attention, is just, no, that energy that you're harvesting off people could be better expended into having an event where, like I said, are corresponding opposite to what the Bilderberg represents. So people who are not politicians, people who are not tied to some corporation or even some NGO that is linked into that spiderweb network of control and manipulation, getting together to discuss ideas, new ideas, solutions, possible methods and other things, etc., to benefit people, to benefit the world, without the politicized agendas, the propaganda involved in it. Call it grilldeburg, rather than billing the berg, as in giving a bill to the household, to the dwelling, so that you're charging them money and getting profit for nothing. You're grilling it. Grill the burger. I know that's a bit cheesy, but it was just what came to my head. You're going to have a cheeseburger, you might as well add a bit of cheese in there, Real cheese, none of this fake plastic stuff. Anyway, that was part of it. Just, I wanted to mention the Bilderberg. I already spent 20 minutes ranting and rambling about bloody Bilderberg. You see what I mean? It's sort of like, yeah, it's useful information. It's a stepping stone of awareness for many people. Yeah. But other than that, these kind of meetings have been going on for forever. Conspiracy is simply two or more people getting together to create a benefit for themselves, excluding others. That's a conspiracy, basically. And these groups have been doing this stuff for a long time. Bilderberg is just one of the meetings that occurs that has been known about for a while, and you can see the relevant connections into geopolitics and events in the world and stuff like that. So it's a good thing to know about, but not something to get stuck on or think that addressing it is going to solve any major problems or change the world in any major way. It's not. And that, I also wanted to note with that there was a Google outage over the weekend. I wondered if there might be some, I know I'm just speculating, wondering, but seems a coincidence that Google has these weird outages on the same weekend that Bilderberg is taking place. Obviously, there's many other events going on around the world as well at the moment over that weekend, certainly. So it's not necessarily obvious to just point at the Bilderberg, but I think it's no coincidence that it's happening at around the same time. Were they making changes again to Google? I haven't noticed any updates in the last couple of days. Nothing major seems to have been reset or changed or anything like that. So curiouser and curiouser. Maybe this has more to do with international virtual warfare rather than anything else, because warfare doesn't necessarily mean people with guns or soldiers, military forces. It can be economic warfare, financial warfare, trade warfare. And when in this modern age, data, information is as much, if not a more valuable resource than physical resources, then virtual warfare, digital warfare is more damaging than physical warfare. I know that seems paradoxical in a way, it definitely is. Yeah, the actual reality of physical existence is obviously more damaged by actual, real physical warfare. But the knock-on effects of digital warfare can have those physical end results. So could it be something connected with all that that's going on at the moment? Is there a bit of shuffling and shunting going on between the two sides? It's primarily two sides. That's what they're pushing towards anyway. A dualistic system to bash together, like two symbols being clashed together. But combining that with the attempt to push out one certain producer of technology, which we mentioned a few times recently, the Huawei, the Chinese tech producer that is putting out most of the 5G technology that the various countries, states, etc., are then installing. In the USA, Trump has had a supposed falling out with Huawei. I think this connects back through Zionist connections. I feel it's time to do a little screen share just for this purpose for 10 minutes. Potentially connections back to other power players, and call them that. That's what they like to think of themselves as. Who have already restricted the rollout of 5G within their own nation state, but they're happy for everywhere else to have this technology installed around them, built around them. But Trump not likey Huawei. He doesn't like this Huawei, and he's making a point about, they want a different provider because they don't trust them, blah, blah, blah. And now Trump's over here to visit the UK for his pomp and circumstance initiation, where the point will be made that the British Crown is still very much a part of that Judeo-Christian root. So your monarchy is dominated by this same group, sponsored by Zionism. And in that sense, could this outage, or Google outage, be building up on the back of this economic conflict and potentially virtualized warfare that's taking place as they're trying to persuade their allies, such as the UK, to buy technology from certain providers, more than likely because some technology's got certain backdoors in that they've built in, so they've got access to, whereas if you buy the technology from somewhere else, it might have somebody else's backdoors in it. So they don't want you to have the Chinese produced stuff because they're worried that things might occur that they have no ability to control or monitor or manipulate, etc., etc. In the big picture of things, whether that makes any real difference in the global scale of what's going on in the various agendas to push out this technology, I don't know, it's debatable, whether one side wins or not. Does it really matter when the whole system's going to be ubiquitous globally anyway? And who gets to sit supposedly in control of it, all that kind of idea is just carrots on sticks that they use to manipulate people in the upper echelons of society by chasing after wealth and power. and giving them this idea that, oh yeah, well, I can become the ruler of such and such fiefdom. You know, if I do their agenda, they'll put me in position as the don of so and so region. Yeah, you're still going to be bending the knee, using that Game of Thrones parlance. You know, you'll still have to bend the knee to the Iron Throne. So, Google outage over the Bilderberg weekend, and just before Trump's pomp and circumstance visit to the UK, to Britain. He's already started a Twitter storm, a Twitter war, flame war, whatever, with the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. No, I nearly burst into Bangor then. But yeah, he's already making his presence known. So there you go. That's enough of his silly face now. Used car salesman. So that was why I was thinking Trump in the Grilldeburg. There you go. That only took about 30 minutes to explain the first one. Now I'm going to try and rush through this last bit, because there is potential last bit, where it's more the middle, which is interestingly, synchronistically relevant. I think, sorry, talking to myself there. I never thought about it at a time when I was writing my notes. I was like, oh yeah, that should be in the middle. To talk about some other stuff that could potentially spread into lots of other areas and be very, very long conversations that I've done in other ways on other shows and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily new stuff that people haven't heard me say before. If you've been listening for a while, maybe if you're new here, it might be new to you, but these are not new ideas. They're old ideas that some people have spoken about for a long time, but they get pushed to the back deliberately. They want people to not be looking in that direction. They want you to look at the lights and the sparkle going on in the center of the maelstrom that's trying to suck you inwards like a singularity. Yeah. I was listening to Steve's show on Saturday night. Check out his show on Steve Tagoose channel. On the Saturday night, he does the mystery show where similar, talking about these kind of subjects often, but he tends not to be talking about news events and whatever. Just talking about philosophical, spiritual questions to do with the law and the way society runs, things like that. But he did a great show on Saturday night talking about the kind of progression that occurs for a lot of people, where you go through this process of awareness and realization and learning, and you're moving through life, basically growing through life, and the way it changes or can change your thinking. And a lot of people go through similar processes in that sense. But the reasons I wanted to bring it up, a few of the things he mentioned led me to think that's very similar to saying dabda, because he was talking about how people would become aware of the lie in something. For example, a simple example that we've often used before, talking about the Father Christmas, the idea of Santa Claus, and the fact that it's a fictional concept, but we sort of present it to our children, to the youngest generation, as if it's something they can believe in. And then as the child grows and they realize that it's not true and that they've been lied to and stuff like that, and it's a deception, it's not real, blah, blah, blah. That can initiate a process, or it does initiate a process for most people, where they go through that stage of like, well, if that's not true, what else in this world is not true? What else is a deception, an illusion, a costume or a facade? And some of the points he raises from there is how often people can go through a kind of a spinning wheel process of, well, you ask that question, that then leads you to questioning the way your society works. That can make you feel like an outcast. That can make you then become a rebel, because you want to change that order of the society that you think is deceiving you. And the process can go on from there of you sort of rebelling against the order. It's quite biblical, which I'll touch on again in a bit. But the main point for this bit is about that dabda, which is a phrase, is just an anachronism. Sorry, not an anachronism. An acronism. A shortening. It's just the title letters of the words for denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And he's considered pretty much the process that nearly everyone goes through when you suffer a bereavement. So it's called the process of grieving, or the grieving process. Most people go through these stages. Yeah, and they're not like that one will last for 2 weeks and that one will last for so and so time. They're not fixed in that sense, and their position in the order is not necessarily fixed. I think, anyway, I've argued this before. Some people experience each phase in a different order, but they go through at some point, they experience each of these phases. Sometimes you end up repeating some, you bounce off one and end up back at the other. So you go through a process anyway of denial, because at first you don't want to believe it's true. You can't believe it's true. Like a lot of people, when they're presented with information about how their government is so riddled with corruption to the very top, that they will do things to the populace that are outright detrimental to the populace. Did you notice that it was actually printed in some of the news media here in the UK recently, that they've agreeing with the figures that we've often talked about here that are somewhat underground or were for a while, the figures of the official death toll since the so-called austerity bullshit began? Over 130,000 people. Think about that. Within it is approximately now a decade, because really the austerity shit started to kick in 2009 and 2010 after the great housing crisis swindle bullshit. But approximately a decade, 130,000 people died in relation to, connection to, something to do with this politicized process that they call fucking austerity bullshit. Theft, robbery is basically what it is. Anyway, I distracted myself from the point I was making. Dabda. Yeah, some people go through this process in a slightly different order, but nearly everyone experiences each of these phases at some point as you go through a bereavement experience. Depression, you pretty much deny it. I don't believe it. I can't believe they'd do something like that. No, it can't be true. It's the same as saying, I can't believe they're dead. They had everything to live for. How did they die? Why did the world take them away? Why did the Great Spirit take them from me? All this kind of initiation of loss begins with denial most of the time. Nearly everyone, even if it only lasts for a few seconds of them go, I can't believe it. I'm so angry. The denial part might only last for a moment, but it's still there. The initial response is almost always, I can't believe that's happened or is happening. Then the anger, as in you obviously just pissed off because you've lost somebody that was dear to you. And please think beyond just this applying to people. This also applies to stuff. For some people, they're so linked to material objects that if they lose that object, they suffer a bereavement process. But it also applies to things that are non-physical and metaphysical. So concepts of the mind, emotions even, ideas, political ideologies, something that was intrinsic to your life in some manner, even if it's not something that occupies your conscious thinking all the time, but it's just there as part of your life. You're used to it being there, and all of a sudden it's taken away. That causes a bereavement experience, and you go through this process. So denial, anger, bargaining is that phase where you try to fix the problem by appealing to where you think the problem came from, or to those that you think might be able to fix it for you. So you're getting fucked over by the system, you start begging the system for relief. So things like, please come and put a food bank in our town because the people here can't afford to buy food because it's too expensive. Bargaining. You're trying to create a deal that will fix the problem that's been caused or the loss that has occurred. You can't believe that it's happened. So in your mind is spinning around a dissonance of how do I fix this so that they're back again? That person that died, how do I get them back? What deal do I have to make to get them back here? And that's, very similar to a lot of the experiences of people as they go through this process of a political awakening. You look at the way the world is run, the way your own country is governed, the way your own county is governed, the same county in the UK, or state if you're in the USA, same thing, near enough. But that also is applicable to things in your life, things in your environment that, as I've said, are non-physical. So nation state is non-physical. So if they suddenly take away the nation state, a lot of people are going to experience the equivalent of a bereavement. They're going to feel like something's just died that they were used to having there. It was part of their life in some way. Even if it is just nostalgia, it's still part of their life. And bargaining to try and fix it, to keep it there, means they will willingly subordinate themselves further and further into servitude because they are so afraid of losing something that they feel is intrinsic to their lives. Whereas the reality of something like the nation state means it's not intrinsic to your life at all. It's a fiction. It's an idea that you agree to. Like Father Christmas, you agree to go along with this illusion that he exists because you get something out of that exchange. Again, using that analogy, that example, Father Christmas gives you this sense of familiar love and environment. You're getting something for nothing, because that's the classic Christmas trickery of you getting something for nothing. You don't do anything and these presents appear. I know that's a very simplified and base way of describing it, but that is a lot of the experience for most people. That's what they see Christmas as. It's just a time that you get free stuff. So the nation state is in effect the same kind of thing. The belief in a fictional thing that gives you something for nothing, supposedly. But the reality of that is it's not something from nothing. It's just that you're getting it for free. The thing has had to have been taken from somewhere else to be given to you. So it's not from nothing. A very clear distinction here. Only the creator can bring something from nothing. But anyone can give you something for nothing. There's a big difference, and it's the difference also in the psychology of how you approach the idea. But I'll try and finish up the other two parts. Dabda. Depression, I think, pretty obvious. I've done the first three: Dabda, denial, anger, bargaining. Then depression, pretty obvious. It means you're beginning to come to terms with the loss that whatever it is you've lost is not going to be there anymore. But it gets you down. It makes you sad. It makes you depressed. And then you get to acceptance. And that's when you start to step out of that acceptance and of depression and accept the fact that, that person or that thing or that idea is no more. But that doesn't mean the world has ended. The world is still continuing. There's lots of other things yet, other stuff, other people for me to be involved in. And Steve describes it in a slightly different way with like 12 steps, and there's the first 3 or 4 and the last at least 2, maybe 3 are different to just the Dabda. But the Dabda, to me, represents quite well the process that most people go through when they start coming into looking at these kind of ideas and questions and information. And it's why I've often said the political awakening leads to a spiritual awakening. I didn't originate that idea. I picked that up from on the internet somewhere at some point. But I've seen it hold true again and again and again, and it held true for me. As I was making my way through the late 90s into the noughties, I was sort of pretty much a minarchist. I certainly was a minarchist by the time we got to the late noughties. You know, we was approaching the housing bubble kind of bullshit. I was still holding out hope that the political system could work if we just reduced it a lot and made sure that there were checks and balances so that we had good people in there and we could weed out the corruption as much as possible and sanitize it and, you know, make it work the way it supposedly is supposed to work. But as time went on more and more, and I went from that political stepping stone up to the spiritual stepping stone of like, well, hang on, where they're even claiming their authority from in the first place? And you begin that kind of questioning, and you know, eventually you move on from the political questions. Well, now, so I'm an anarchist. I'll quite happily add an adjective and say I'm a philosophical anarchist, simply to soften the blow for most people, because most people have been trained to think that anarchy just means destruction. So they fear you as soon as you say anarchy. They think you're going to start killing them. You know, oh, he's an anarchist. He's going to try and kill me. So, you know, so I say philosophical anarchist, which they then go, oh, philosophy is about thinking stuff, innit, mate? So therefore, if you say that means you think about stuff before you get anarchy about it, and it just slows the roll of their entrained Pavlovian response of saying anarchy to someone. You know, the entrained response is you say anarchy, they think murder, death, destruction. That's an entrained response been encoded into the structure of their mind. It was for me when I was younger, yeah, until I learned better. I progressed beyond that. Anyway, yeah, get back to the point. The Dabda and that process of moving from one point to another of realization, and the spiral widens as you begin your process of experiencing this existence. And at first, you've got your parents or whoever it is that's in your environment that cares for you as an infant, because you wouldn't survive without care. Therefore, you know, your experience wouldn't be very long. So the very fact that you've got this far means somebody was caring for you. That begins that process of you feel that everything is being given to you for free, for nothing. Yeah, the parents are the magic Father Christmas that brings you stuff for nothing. And they provide it for you. You don't have to even ask for it, apart from occasionally you might go, hey, I'm hungry, give me food. But at the beginnings of your youngest part of your life, that's what you experience. That then gets transferred to the wider family group as you get a little older and you get to know your siblings and you realize that you're part of a grouping of some kind, if you have that kind of family grouping. If you don't, you'll replace it with a surrogate peer group. That's what most people do if they don't have the traditional family unit. They replace that family unit with their peer group. So their friends become their siblings, and maybe somebody who's older that they know and interact with, they'll adopt as sort of like a surrogate parent and look up to them as a parental figure. And then that then transfers to a bit larger part of your society as you begin your education process in the school system. I'm shaking my head a bit and saying the education system. So the spiral widens a bit further and you start learning about bigger networks of people. And that then becomes another circle of authority that you externalize to, because the people at school, your parents, tell you, oh, listen to your teacher, do what your teachers tell you, obey the rules in school, as they hand you over at the gate when you're a young child beginning your school process. So you externalize even further that expectation of authority to now this bigger grouping. And then from there, I think it should be pretty obvious. It expands to society at large. So the governmental political system, and you adopt this perception of them being that kind of surrogate authority figure or structure. And the spiral keeps widening. Eventually you get to a point, usually for most people, it's in their early 30s, because you go through this process in a sequence such that in your late teens, early 20s, you will form a long-term relationship. Then not long after, you'll more likely start having children. You'll form a family, and you will be required, because you have a family to look after, you will be required to have a somewhat stable enough lifestyle. So in other words, you've got to have some way of bringing food to the table, whether that be from working a job or being in a trade or getting benefits. However you do it, you are required to have a certain amount of structure within your life, within your environment, so that you can take care of the family. Yeah, and this is not just applicable to men or women, it's both. You know, this applies to both. It's not gender specific in any way. And then from that point, that family unit becomes the new center to your reality. You transfer from your parental environment where you were the child, now you are the parent. So it's that kind of budding process where you separate from the household and you are now an independent unit onto yourself, you know, hopefully, unlike modern times with the kind of state of the economy and blah, 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 price of bacon. But my point being, it's only after that that you get to a stage where, for a lot of people, this is true, and why we have the cliche of the midlife crisis bullshit. You get to a stage where it's like, right, okay, I got that sorted, got that going, got the home, the kids are there, they're growing up, we got food to put in their bellies and clothes to put on their back. We're getting there. We're getting, what's going on? Yeah, we're paddling. This is, yeah, we're hitting a nice patch here. Yeah? Okay, now what the fuck's going on? What exactly else is that? What do I do next? Where's the road gone? I thought we were supposed to be going in a certain direction. Yeah, this I've found over the years is true for the majority of people. Yes, there'll be a few individuals that are either very, very ordered, such that they've got a life plan that's marked out on a calendar per year. They know exactly what they're going to be doing every 10 years, blah, blah, blah. And some people are the other side of their life is just chaotic and they don't know if they're coming or going half the time. But for the majority, they're somewhat in that middle. They've got what they've been taught they were supposed to have. They got the house, they got the car, they got the 2.5 kids, and maybe more or less. They got the dog or the cat or whatever, all that kind of stuff going on. So they're left in this sense of like, well, okay, what do I do now other than get me head to the grindstone and keep working away until retirement? Is that it? Go on holiday once a year? What? Is that it? And a lot more of the questions of what is going on in life? What is life? What are we calling life? What is this society that I'm part of? What is this world that I'm seeing around me? Another level of it's like a new birth, and I'm not talking about new age church religion bullshit here. It is like the birth of your spiritual self when you were an infant. When you were a tiny little child, your primary concern was figuring out this physicality thing that you were experiencing and how to be in that physical experience. Think in particular about, we have that experience as we grow up. We get to beginning of teenage years and you get the massive hormonal changes of puberty, and it can be very much about your body. What's going on with my body? What the hell? Almost all of our early life is about the body self, the physical self, and our connections of the environment based from that point of view, that physical self point of view. What home do I live in? What town do I live in? What friends do I go and hang out with? Where do we go and hang out? Who am I seen with? Where do I like to go and party? Where do I work? It's all about the physical. It's only when you start to achieve somewhat of a balance and of a routine of your physical, then all of a sudden you're left with that nice bit of breathing space in yourself that you can go, okay, I've got this physical stuff going on. Now, what else is there? Because there's all this other expanse that I can explore into, I can think about, I can imagine, I can read about, I can learn about various things of other people talking about this kind of beyond the physical experience. Most people won't necessarily think of it in that kind of way. You know, they'll be less consciously aware of exploring beyond the physical. But the point is, they got that itch in the back of the head of like, there should be something more than this. What's going on? What is this thing we're saying is life? If I've got all this physical stuff sorted and going, what else is there? I'm sure there'll be a few people out there going, well, there isn't anything else. Stop your silly questioning. Just get on with it. There are a few people that are still completely enamored of the materialism. And that, right, back to my notes. Try and get on with it. Attached to the material was what I put in my notes. So that's the point. The senses, only senses. I watched Jeff C's latest video that he put up about how they're programming the youth. And this is why most of this kind of programming to do with narcissism, selfishness, solipsism, sociopathic attitudes and thinking is directly targeted at the youth, because most young people, like I've just been trying to describe, most younger people are experiencing life in such a way that their thinking is very much attached to their body. So it's all about the five senses. It's only when you get to that late 20s, early 30s, where you get that breathing space in your life that you have the opportunity to listen to the quieter things and ask some more explorative questions. You know, you can step outside of just the five senses. But that's what they're primarily targeting, is the sensory body, the physical senses, the five senses that connect us to this, what they call physical material reality. And the solipsism and narcissism kind of mindset is fueled by things like the idea of being in love with the image in the mirror, being in love with the image, the illusion, what you project out to everybody else. In other words, what does everybody else think of me? Am I validated by the value that they give on me and the way I look and act and sound to them? Children desperately have to fit in to the familiar unit after they're born, because if they don't, they die because they can't physically take care of themselves. So it is hardwired into our thinking at the beginning that we make effort to fit in. I think this as well is possibly a core of why, for younger people, they can spin off into various mental problems, mental issues, if they feel rejected, because at a very early level, that seed can create a root that builds a very crooked house, such that they feel totally outside of society, to the point of being sociopathic, psychopathic. Anyway, yeah, that's discussion for other stuff. But they're in love with the image in the mirror, the thing that they think they want to be, because that's what they've been told by everybody else. And everybody else doesn't just mean their friends and family, etc. It means the media that they're saturated with, the expectations that are projected at them by the societal institutions, such as the education system, the judiciary, whatever. You can think of loads of things in society where they project out to you a certain expectation of how you must look, behave, sound, interact, etc., etc. I'm not saying all that is bad. Please don't think that means everything they're saying is bad. It's not. But there is a problem created by that need to fit in. When you're an infant, you need to fit in so that your family takes care of you and provides for your physical needs, because without it, you would die in the woods. You'd starve to death in the woods. So you try to fit in, and that creates a foundational method of thinking or structure of thinking so that affects the progression of your life from that point up until you feel that you've got most of this physical stuff dealt with on a daily basis. You can survive, you can get by day to day, you got food provided, blah, blah, blah. Then the breathing space arrives that you can think about things a bit outside of that, beyond that, further than that. The nation state of mind, I sort of alluded to this earlier when I was using the Father Christmas example. The nation state of mind is another example of an illusion. It does not actually exist. It is just an agreement in your mind that you make with other people. If we could jump 20,000 years into the future, if you just stopped all history's progression now, jumped 20,000 years into the future, and people were still breeding through that time, yeah? So there's human beings in that future 20,000 years from now, and you ask them, what do you know about such and such country? They'd be like, what? What the fuck's that? What's a country, mate? Well, and you try to explain to them the ideas of a nation state and the flags and the little symbols and heraldry and all this stuff. They'd be like, what? Where's that? I can't see that anywhere. Is it in the sky? Is it in the ground? Is it in the rocks? Show me that in the rocks. Where is there a rock that looks like that? There isn't. It doesn't occur in natural reality. It's something that we construct, and it begins its construction in your mind. It is basically a mental construction that we then agree to. It's a contract that we supposedly agree to. Like I said right at the start of this rant, there's a hell of a lot here that you could send you off in other directions into lots of other information, because, did you get that choice? In this country, I'm here in the UK, I was never presented with a choice of like, oh, this is the UK and you were born here, so do you want to be part of the UK? Do you understand what it means to agree to that contract? Do you understand that in doing so, you will be contractually required, obliged to do certain things and act in a certain way, etc., etc., etc.? Do you sign here, do you? Was you ever offered that? No? It was just assumed for you, wasn't it? And that assumption was also used for your spiritual self. What some would call the soul. Some religions like to try and claim ownership of all these kind of ideas, but let's just bunk them. But a few hundred years ago, one of those groups decided to say, oh no, everybody's soul on the earth belongs to us. I am assuming ownership of all of them, and they have to petition for their the saving of their souls. They've got to prove to me that they're obeying the rules the way I demand, and then I'll give them a little tick box to say, yes, this one's paid his dues, he's saved. More fiction, more contracts assumed for you without inquiry as whether you're even interested in the first place. That nation state of mind and that concept of accepting an illusion without any good comprehension of what it is you're agreeing to, or even being offered the choice of agreement in the first place, that's exceedingly unhealthy and detrimental. And to try and claim that the perpetuation of it is beneficial to the organism as a whole, and I often talk about it, people are a bigger organism than just each individual. We are connected in many, many ways, and we work in groups and societies. We work better. Yeah, the individual can survive on their own, but really we work best when we work in groups, and bigger groups work, achieve more and more and more. So if they're accepting an illusion, thinking that it's reality, isn't that what we're supposedly told means mental illness? That means insanity. I'm being asked to accept an insane dictatorship because you just say, well, that's what it is, mate. It's always been that way. No, sorry. I know that my creator did not put me into this experience as like I've been interred in an insane asylum. No. You're trying to create an insane asylum. I'm talking about, like I was on about the Bilderberg kind of people who live in that separated world from the rest of the population. The pharaonic is another way of describing it. They are like a bunch of pharaohs in a separate world to the rest of us. Sorry, I'll finish up what I was saying. In the long run, it comes back to what many people describe as spiritual warfare. There are some people that are trying to convince you that what you need to adhere yourself to is material reality, what they describe as material reality, physical reality, materialism. But they can't provide scientific proof of the existence of their claim of materialism, even though we've been trying for so many centuries to try and pin this thing down. So where is it? Hang on! Oh shit! My pin's too big. Okay, it's not small enough to get it. At some point, they might reach the bottom of that well, maybe. And I'm just caveating myself because I doubt it. I don't think there ever will be a bottom to that well, because reality goes in both directions infinitely. So everywhere you look out from the planet, you just see constant more. And every time they tighten their microscope smaller and smaller and smaller, they see more. Reality doesn't work that way, as there is a finite tiny beginning and a finite massive macro ending size of everything. Doesn't work that way. And we're in that middle ground between those two extremes of people who are obsessed with this material reality, which when it comes down to it, any of these systems of governance and aristocracy and monarchies are all about controlling material reality more than anything. Why is it that they've laid claim to everything? Why is it that there's a bit of paper that says the Queen owns this part of the world? She owns 3/4, most of Canada, something like 60%, almost 3/4, 60+% of Canada belongs to the Crown estate, to be technically accurate, not the Queen, not Elizabeth, but the Crown estate. Things like that. Why is it that they need to own all the physical materia, yet existence goes far beyond the physical? And your initial experience is like, oh, hang on, where am I? Oh, there's this physical experience. And gradually, as I grow in my life, I realize that there's more than just the physical. And what has a lot more importance to me is things like relationships, love, emotions, memories, which may have been initiated in a physical reality, but their existence and perpetuation and importance and value to me are long past physical. And the more I've learned, I'll speak from my own point of view now, not project onto anybody else, but the more I've learned about the way this reality works and the various perceptions of how to try and interpret it, too many D's in that, interpret it. Too many D's in there seems quite synchronistically connected as well, because I put in the Mahabharata as well in my notes, because it's a reflection, it's an emanation of that infinite character play that in that storyline. Just like the Bible is a fractal reflection of an infinite character play where the hero is going through his life experience, realizing that physical reality is not the end-all answer to everything. There is something far more than that, and your progress through this physical reality is just that, a journey, a progression of learning that doesn't end when your physical body is worn out. It's just the flesh suit that you wear while you're in this part of reality. religions can describe it as like the valley of death. You know, when you are immersed into the physical experience, when you are convinced or deluded that that is all that exists, the materiality is all that exists, then you are in effect going through hell, because physical reality does nothing but crunch together in the middle. All the power structures try to centralize everything together into the middle. All the monarchies try to centralize everything together into the middle. Everything under their control, everything under their dominance, everything with their monitoring eye over the top of it. But that's not the way reality works, and you will eventually progress beyond here. Right, anyway, sorry, I'll really quickly try and finish this other bit. I ain't really said everything I wanted to say with that, because I could talk about that kind of stuff for many hours. But last week's episode, Earache posted a question, a sort of a question, more comments, asking why do I not talk about things like remedies? What remedies is it worth talking about? And I think this is because I mentioned the mortgage swindle, the Great Mortgage Swindle hoax documentary last week. So I think maybe he was talking more about that, because in what I've encountered, this is often what people mean when they talk about remedies. It's either financial or it's something to do with the judiciary. So in other words, what's my remedy of dealing with a debt collector because they're trying to get money off me, or they're trying to take my stuff, you know, like bailiffs at the door and stuff like that? Or what's my remedy of dealing with the court? I've got to go and pay a parking fee because the ANPR camera caught me and stuff like that. Remedy is an interesting word in that respect. Is like, what exactly do you mean by remedy? Because usually it's quite specific when people are talking about remedies. And it did also make me think that the word itself contains somewhat of the answer. Re means to return to, or to initiate again, to start again. Medi or medi, medi from that kind of Latinized root, the Romantic languages root, means in the middle, median. The middle ground is the median ground. So to remedi, to remedy, to remed-I is to bring things back into the middle, to get the even keel again. We're on the nice, calm river paddling again. Yeah, we're back in the middle. Yeah? No more rough, massive, extreme oscillations that are causing us problems because they unbalance your world. So remedy, and I put in my notes as well, correspondence of extremes, because that's, I've banged on about this so many times. It's a lot of what the system does. It presents people with two very polarized extremes, and because of the distance between them, they can bash you about much more because you're pinging such a longer distance, basically, between those two extremes. So when you talk about remedy, you're trying to get back into the middle with the calmer waters rather than being in the violent oscillating waters. But the reason I think he was asking, like I said, mention the mortgage swindle, and I don't get into, very rarely, I've done it a little bit in the past with some questions, mainly to do with things like citizenship and nation states and stuff like that. But I don't bother with trying to approach that kind of information that people call remedies. And not because I don't want to know. I've looked at a lot of the stuff myself over the years, and I will point people in directions of certain things occasionally. Like I'll mention things like the mortgage swindle documentary. You know, I've mentioned things many times in the past. I talked a lot about like the, what was it called, OPPT, which was an idea that they were pushing out there, that there were certain legal forms you could fill in, and you could make the criminal code, I can't remember the full name of it, the global criminal code system. It's sort of like the global law book that most nations have signed on to some degree or another. Most of them have ratified it completely. But it's a bit more like corporate law. because really what it's concerned with is trade, countries not ripping each other off in terms of trade and stuff like that. But this OPPT thing claimed that there were some forms and some letters you could do that meant you could be, you could remove yourself from the whole question of citizenry and you could become just an earthling. Yeah, in effect, you've got like a Lloydial title and stuff like that. But with nearly every time when I've looked into these things that have been put out there, they turn out either to be just con men selling bullshit because they know, the way to escape the system, mate, is you have to have your own royal herald. You have to have your own coat of arms created. How do you do that? Oh, you pay me $2,000 and I'll get one made up for you, because you have to be signed into the College of Arms. Your coat of arms has to be registered in the College of Arms book of heraldry. So if it's registered, that means you've handed it over to the regis. The registrar is the representative of the crown. So in other words, you're not free, you've just signed up to something else. But you've handed over all this money to some con man who's convinced you that it means you're escaping the matrix. And there's lots of supposed remedies for financial stuff out there as well. There's some that do work, there's some that are genuine. You can look into things like getoutofdebt.org, the Get Out of Debt website. They've been successfully using formatted letters to help people with debt problems for years now. And there's other stuff like if you've got problems with council tax, there's groups out there that can help you with things like that. You've got problems with bailiffs, there's groups out there that can help you with things like that. And that's why I don't get into doing that kind of stuff, because there's already, and there's well established now, groups and individuals who've got good knowledge and experience of dealing with that kind of stuff. I don't see the purpose of repeating what they've already done. So I'll happily point people towards stuff like that, but I don't bother sort of bringing it to the show and saying, like, oh, this week we're going to talk about such and such remedy. There's too many out there that are just, you can't confirm that they've been truly successful in any way beyond maybe one person or a handful of individuals, such that, well, it's still no answer for the big questions, the big problems, the big picture. And that's what brings me to addressing the other thing I put in the subtitle, We Build the World. And this is something that Steve was bringing up on his show on Saturday. Yeah, that's why, like I said, I saw a lot of, I could agree with a lot of the things he was saying. I disagree on a couple of points, but other than that, we're saying very similar things. Yeah? But we build the world. And when it comes to things like remedies, the greatest remedy you can do is be the change you want to see in the world. And doing that knowingly with awareness of what you're doing, think about the consequences if you decide to take certain actions, things like that. This doesn't mean everybody turns into Gandhi, because not everybody could be anything like that. Yeah. Plus, why clone yourself after somebody else? Be your own hero. Don't just try and copy yourself into somebody else. Yeah. I was thinking about Bruce, so do you think I look like Bruce? Am I cloning myself after Bruce? Even, is he a hero for me? It was certainly very inspirational, yes. Whether I'd call him a hero, I'm not sure on that. Yeah. I think a lot of that kind of idea of the archetypal hero is not exactly beneficial. But I could see, he could be viewed as being heroic for a lot of the things he represented and that he brought to the public eye. Yeah. Anyway, we build the world. A lot of the remedies are great. They're useful for people in certain specific situations. Yes, there can be remedies out there that can help them. But in terms of the bigger picture, I do not accept anymore that you're going to be able to change the bigger picture just by getting the right person in power. It doesn't work. These political systems have been tried for hundreds of years now, and we're still here now having this same conversation. If anything, the situation has ground back to how it was 150 to 200 years ago, where a lot of countries were in a state of extreme flux. Some of the revolutionary processes were starting back then. And I've explained a few times over the years in different shows, I don't agree with that violent revolution approach. That will not work either. That just serves the purpose of those people that are safe in their bunkers, who come out after the fact and say, oh, right, you destroyed everything. Well, do you want to buy a new shopping mall? This is the latest version. This shopping mall is not going to offend you like that one that you just burnt down. So the Phoenix process doesn't work. The political process doesn't work. Because the Phoenix process they use in a physical sense, again, tied to materialism, again, that's that density that holds you down from your true energetic progression. Doing things for yourself, being your own hero, changing the way you interact with this reality, which includes every part of it, your family, your friends, your society, your neighborhood, etc., etc. From the bottom up, it rises from the bottom up in the same way as your energetic body goes upwards. Yeah. If you do a magnetic resonance image of the human being, the magnetic body, the energy body of the human being goes upwards, starts in your lower chakras, in your pelvis, and goes up to the crown chakra at the top of your head. Your physical processes go downwards. You put food in your face, it goes down and comes out the bottom. Yeah, at the bottom. Energy goes upwards. Physicality goes downwards, because there is that collecting into the middle, into the singularity again, the mysterious gravity that draws everything into the center. So you really want to change the world, it starts from the bottom layer of the pyramid, then it affects whatever structure is sat on top of that foundational layer. And that foundational layer is the everyday people that build the world and inhabit it. Not the strangely separated, delusional, isolated personas that have been inculcated in backroom closed areas, separated from everybody else. They're not aware of reality in the same way as everybody else. They don't realize the existence in the same way as everybody else does. They're still, I think, this is going back to some of the stuff I said earlier, they're still stuck in that concept of the externalized parent figure that gives them something for nothing. Please don't misunderstand me with that. I'm not saying that people should not have access to the abundance that this reality gives us without a middleman charging them money. No, I'm not that kind of capitalist. No, sorry. If anything, I'm the opposite of that kind of capitalist. That kind of capitalist process is enforced upon everybody. And again, that connects us back to who the fuck owns everything or claims that they own everything? How did they own everything? Isn't that magical? That's the real magic of the controllers, is that one day they went, oh yeah, we own all this. And everybody went, oh, do you? Wow, fucking hell. I never realised you could own a forest. Yeah, you can. Look, he's got a bit of paper that says he owns that forest. Anyway, I haven't fitted in everything I got in there. Like I said, it's one of those things where I'm dipping into subjects that could expand for a long time. So I'll leave it at that point, because it's already nearly 9:30. Sorry, guys, I've been ranting for a while.
No, it's still here, Cookie. It's all good stuff. You could talk for weeks, like you say. Because there's so much information, isn't there? So much to get people to sort of consider and look at and think about.
I think there's a lot of connected concepts that come together to a root that is, it's explainable, but to get the explanation out, certainly for me anyway, it takes me a few hours to put all the pictures together so that people can then see the grand vista, as it were.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, that's the thing. When I was years back looking into stuff, and I'd watch lectures for hours or whatever, read books, whatever, and you'd, because you're interested in knowing that sort of stuff, you were ready for that sort of time in your life. Maybe, like you said about the birth of your spiritual self, you know, comes about at some point in your life where, and then what I sort of noted down was the system steps in to try and hijack that to a certain degree, to keep you from sort of really going and, you know.
Well, they offer you a cartoonified version of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, you'll get the people that buy into like the kind of commercialized new age stuff, where they buy a dream catcher and they think that's it, they're done. You know, sorted. I got my dream catcher.
Yeah, but it's it. I mean, I've just made a few notes when you were talking, just daft stuff writing down. You know, just to encapsulate. You know, like the House of Greed. You know, that sort of thing. You know, just the greed and the more materialism. And you're saying about that feeding into, you know, people, and the narcissistic people we now seem to, because of the internet and this rise of the selfies and the image and what you look like. I mean, that goes back to, say, music, doesn't it? Like MTV back in the 70s, 80s, when the image became more important than the song.
Yeah,
and you know that's
even though, like I was describing, even though they're loving an image, what that connection does is separate them from their selves, such that it draws them away from even the concept of thinking that they're more than just their physical body, which is reflected in that image. Do you see what I mean? It's a little bit ironic, the fact that they're loving an image, an idea, but by loving that particular idea, it separates them from their own actual physical reality, their own experience.
Yeah, and partly that came about after the probably controlled fights between the mods and the rockers. People used to go to dances, people used to go listen to music to dance in great big numbers. Same with the ska movement, which was skinhead, reggae, Jamaican music. But you know, a lot of those movements turned violent. Different.
And I think deliberately so, Gary, because you've got to look back further and see who was like behind this type of think. I mean, we mentioned Bilderberg, but you think about the think tanks going back to the 1920s and the Club of Rome and the Royal, well, Chatham House, you know, 1920, I think that was sort of set up or whatever. And you know, all that type of manipulation was being already, you know, pre-planned. You know, so they knew music, a growth of youth. You know, the times change after the war. You know, how they socially engineered that to a certain degree with the music they provided and the sort of stuff that they push to be popular. You see, because they have the media behind them, they have the money behind them, so they can put those sorts of, easily put that out there into that generation, teenagers, that sort of, you know, after the war, that sort of stuff. So
the one other thing that I said I would do, and I'll do that now while we're sort of talking about stuff, because I won't get into the details of the other comment that I mentioned at the start. Like I talked about the one that Earache posted about the remedies. But it was another comment from a while ago that, you know, it doesn't really matter the kind of stuff that was thrown backwards and forwards in the comment. What matters is the links that I'm putting into the chat room now, that if you're interested in these kind of topics, will take you to some web pages. One of them is a scientific paper. I think that's this one. Yeah, that's the main paper that cites a lot of other peer-reviewed papers that talk about the damage that can be done by high-frequency emitters. In other words, 5G stuff. Yeah, that's what it's really about. And the reason I'm really putting it in now to sort of mention it now is because what I was saying about them separating people from themselves. You know, part of that process is this rollout of the ubiquitous wireless technology that they want to, well, they are setting up everywhere.
Yeah.
This is, even if you choose, and it would be a choice to not believe the science that has been shown by some of these studies, you know, because that was partly how the commentary was going. It was sort of like, oh, okay, so you accept the scientific method, but you only want to accept what one scientist says, not the other scientists. So in other words, then you don't accept the scientific method. What you're doing is relying on an externalized authority again who tells you, trust me, I know it's truth. Just give these pregnant mothers that thalidomide drug. It won't do them any harm, honest. Yeah. Whereas the way the scientific method works is it's about the data, the information, not the scientist. But other than making sure they're competent, which you can do by that's the whole point of the peer review system. So you can look at their work and go, hang on a minute, mate, you were using a beaker there when you should have been using something. What are you doing? Yeah. But other than that, it's talking about the science. And if you, what I was going to say is, even if you choose to ignore the science about EMF being able to damage biological stuff, biomass, your physical self, your organic material around you, then consider the way, as we've been talking about and often talked about, the psychological damage that can be done by the ubiquitous saturation of media streams into a society that has now been encouraged to externalize their existence, their value, into an illusory self, an image on a screen. So now you've got young people who value more their social media profile than their own physical existence. Yeah. So, you know, you want to dispute the physical, biological effects, even though the science to back it up, you go for it. You dispute those physical effects. But let's bring in all these other papers and articles that are now starting to come out about the psychological damage that this shit is already doing before we've even got the saturation level that is going to come with 5G and the Internet of Things. Talk about that denial barrier. Yeah, that's that denial barrier in effect. They don't want to let this thing die because they love it so much. They can't accept that the reality of it is that it is destructive and detrimental. So in other words, when it's something destructive and detrimental, you should get away from it and let it die off. They don't want to do that. They want to keep it alive because they love their image reflected in its surface.
Yeah, and you see the articles like I saw today. America now is going to be able to demand your social media history to get a visa.
That's right. Yeah.
And the employers as well doing that now.
Yeah.
I mean that links right into the, you know, kids are sitting there thinking, oh no, I won't go and look at that. That might be fake news, but anyway, I don't want it on my social media site. Yeah.
Yeah. It will eventually progress into a social crediting system. Yeah. I mean, the commercial side is already taking it up. The Americans had basically just adopted the Israeli method. Again, I could show that screen share image, you know, sponsored by Ziogism. The USA is now adopting the method that they've had in Israel for the past several years, where they want access to your computers and they want to know your passcodes to get on your accounts and everything so they can check your social media footprint.
You remember I mentioned these people that are against netting?
Yeah.
With birds. Well, you know the way Twitter is, everyone's cross-connected and that. Well, this is one of the spin-offs from the climate change thing. There's this group called Rewilding Britain, and they've finally got 100,000 petitions. So they're gonna debate it in Parliament now. I mean, this is not set up at all. You know, this wasn't a sting operation at all. 100,000. They got their 100,000 signatures, and now they're going to talk about handing back large parts of the wild to nature, which I've seen myself here in Spain. Yeah.
Agenda 21.
Yeah. I mean, you've got bears in Pyrenees. The locals hate it because they attack sheep, and you know you can't blame the poor bears. Oh, yes, you can. Yeah, and wild pigs as well. And yeah, again, it stops people going out. Yeah. I mean, people only got to see a wild boar once when they're on their country walk. They'll think twice about going the next time. Yeah, it's They're just like rats, yeah. Unless you really pin one down, they're not going to attack. But you know, it happens just enough that you can scare 1,000,000 people with it. Yeah?
Yeah, I think they will push that kind of extreme polarity of it as well. Because I was just thinking about the fact I can agree to a certain degree. Yeah, as in, yeah, it'd be nice if some of the original wildlife was back in the areas where they used to be, that we've exterminated them through overhunting and whatever. Yeah, that's a nice idea, but I've seen some of the documentation, so I know that is just the thin end of the wedge. And the whole idea is that once they get the public to like the idea of having these kind of wild areas that have been rewilded, that then progresses into that UN agenda map where there will be vast areas that are no humans allowed.
Yeah, I mean,
That's thin end of the wedge.
I mean, it's an ecosystem. Just stop using the glyphosate and the pesticides. The insects will recover, the birds will recover, the little animals will recover. I mean, they can recover very quickly, yeah?
Yeah. I was going to say, obviously, certain species won't return. Maybe that's not so obvious, but I think it is more than likely that certainly some of the bigger species, like in that image, what was that, a beaver? Something like that isn't going to just appear out of nowhere. They'd have to be reintroduced. But so yeah, you're right in the sense of like just the ecosystem itself. If you stop messing with it, nature's really, really good at doing its thing. Yeah, that's one thing. Is like we humans can do this, that, and the other, but nature will always beat us in the sense of its ability to just get into every nook and cranny of reality. If there's an opportunity to thrive, it does it. Oh, you got back in again, Corn.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm having a few connection issues. The local area is suffering. So if I drop out, then I'll call it quits tonight. But yeah, yes, yeah, I dropped out. I can't remember. Yeah, it was. I was going to say something to make notes before, but I just made notes really about understanding it's not just the Bilderberg group. It's the, there's a bigger picture there. It's many groups, and they're always meeting secretly with their Chatham House rules and sort of thing that they imply to not allowed to discuss anything outside of the meetings and all this stuff. So there's all this kind of secrecy, and that's got to be concern for most people. Why they're all secret? Why, when we know why, because we see what they're doing. You see what Trump's doing right now over here with his Trump gas and his machine,
He's still no, he's gone again. It's probably because you mentioned the Trump. They've set the Google outage onto you. The Google has outed you. Are you back again? Can you hear us? Because you cut out and dropped out again, man.
I'm back. It just seems to automatically reconnect me, but the connection's dropping. But so it's not. I'm not having to mess around. But I don't know how far. But Trump gas, yeah, Trump gas, and all the rest of it. So yeah, we've got a lot of, like I say, people have it's not just one or two things. There's a lot, and like you said tonight, it takes a long time for people to, I suppose it's you do it in easy steps and over time, like I've done over the last, I don't know, I'd say the last 15, 16 years of stuff, looking into things and beginning to think and going through that, that spiritual sort of self-growth and all the rest of it, that wasn't hijacked, thankfully, and you can see through the bullshit and all the rest of it. So that's the problem, and I see the new age stuff just doing a lot of don't realize they're misusing it. They misuse the energy, without intentionally doing bad, but it's not really getting people to, the understanding of the whole picture. It's just keeping people, like you said before, down rabbit holes and stuck in certain areas and not wanting to look at the horrible things that are really happening as well. Just shutting off from that. And that's the other thing. It's getting people to, see reality for what it is and deal with the situation we found ourselves born into. And you know, that starts with the children, education, and teaching them, you know.
Yeah. If you teach them they've only got 12 years to live,
Anyway.
then don't be surprised if they adopt a nihilistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you expect of them? Yeah, some of them will sort of rise to the challenge. You know, they'll try and do the heroic thing and save the world.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's like, that's the double whammy, isn't it? With this, kids marching for school. They know the 12, 13-year-olds, yeah, they're going to go through a change in a few years' time. And that's when they'll decide to take the nihilism instead of the marching for climate. Yeah, that's a good point, Cookie. Also, I noticed that when you were saying that the baby wants, you know, it only wants to be fed by its parents, well, the political system feeds right into that, doesn't it? Trump versus Democrats, mother, father kind of thing. And of course, you've always got the chance, if you don't like one, to sort of sneak behind their back, go and try and persuade the other instead.
Yeah. Maybe it was just an inevitable process of reduction.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watch game.
Oh.
Go on.
No, you go on, man. Go first in case you get cut off again. If you can hear me.
Oh, was I lagging there? I'm probably lagging on as well. Sorry, because I said that word. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
No, I think I'm.
Yes.
I think I'm gone.
You're gone, man.
Yeah.
Solid gone.
You can hear me.
Yes, we can. Yeah. Hang on. Let me try typing it in the side chat. Maybe you'll see it.
Yeah, we can hear you, Pete. We can hear you. It was coming through all right.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, no worries. And I forgot what I was going to say now. Where was I? I don't know. I lost my train of thought. I thought you couldn't hear me, so keep dropping out. So it's all gone shit tonight. But never mind. Hopefully the connection's better for Wednesday, but they reckon they're not going to fix this issue in the area till about Thursday. So I may still have some connection problems then. So
it's just not good enough. We should petition the government and demand that they install internet in everywhere.
Yeah, 5G tomorrow. I'm fed up with this lagging and buzzing.
I'm fed up with these telephones. All I get is a crackly phone line.
We've all got dodgy connections. Yeah, dodgy connections tonight. But
all I was going to say was, I'm not sure if it would have been inevitable anyway that the political system would end up at just two parties, a binary, you know, two opposing sides. But it does perfectly suit that competing parental figure, you know. So like in a divorce case, you know, you can try and play one parent off against the other to get what you want.
Yeah.
I listened to Mark Pasio this week, and the woman that he was talking with was talking about how various European countries now are kind of knocking back their big parties, like, you know, Labour and Conservative in England. Yeah, they're reckoning in Germany the major parties are under attack, with Greens actually getting votes for once. And, you know, I'm wondering if that's the way that they're going to go now, just to sort of keep people distracted. Yeah.
They'll dissolve it and dissolve it and dissolve it into a smorgasbord of selections, such that
they pull out all the stuff.
It's working even better with the lag in there as well. Yeah, it'll be a chaos of selection.
Is it? I'm gonna do it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, your lag's at least like 5 seconds, five or 6 seconds long. So
I know. Well, we did mention it once, I think, a little bit, but in this European election, it kind of almost sailed by me that people are voting.
I'll speak in. I'll catch you on Wednesday. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. with your laggy connection.
Cheers anyway.
All right, we'll see you
Yeah.
on Wednesday.
Good night.
Okay, good night, right?
Yeah, see you on Wednesday, guys. All the best.
Yeah, Peter's obviously got a really bad connection tonight, so check his channel, Reality Chat. The channel's called Reality Chat, and we do Reality Chat on a Wednesday night at 8 p.m. GMT. And hopefully he'll have a good enough connection for this Wednesday.
I did notice they sort of got by me a little bit with this European election, sort of, you know, trying to get the message across to people that this is the one election we really do need to vote, and it really makes a difference in the European Union Parliament. And, well, I mean, it is a war of attrition. I get tired of countering these things, even in comments and that. But,
I think that's part of what they want, though. That's part of the result that they want. You know, eventually it's going to get to the point where every demographic will have its own political representative, you know, an independent that you can vote for. They'll find somebody that suits you. And a lot of it's how to describe it? It's an appropriated flow of energy. There is a natural reaction amongst the public that they're fed up with the standard system, the two sides, or even the three parties, if you include the lame Dems, the lame ducks, the Lib Dems. But a lot of people are fed up with that because it's not achieving what they want. For example, Brexit. Yeah? So they're voting for other parties. That is a natural reflection of people feeling that things are getting out of control or they've gone too far. You know, the politics is too corrupt, so they want to bring in some new people, some fresh blood to clear it out, you know, drain the swamp, all that kind of bullshit. So some of it, I think, is a natural reaction from the public. But then that's being appropriated and enabled and fueled by the system of the governance that is now, thanks to this new technology, able to monitor public reaction in such a way that they can isolate in the sense of what they're looking at, not as in physically isolate. They can pin down different demographics and go, look, there's a growing demographic of people that like politicians who wear bright orange ties. So let's give them a candidate who likes wearing bright orange ties. Yeah, so they're feeding into this natural reaction of people looking for alternatives.
Again, maybe it got past me that the media have been telling us it was popular, but it was still only 50-point-something%, and that's the biggest in 2 decades.
Yeah.
So again, we reach that problem where they don't have a proper mandate. I mean, in the last 2 decades, they haven't had a proper mandate if the voting's less than 50%. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The not voters make the decision. We don't want the system. So it has no legitimacy. At least that should be how it works. But of course, they ignore that.
One thing I sort of add in to the concept of voting, because, you know, I've heard it so many times, people saying, well, if you don't vote, you can't complain and that kind of stuff. And I said it myself years ago when I still believed in the political system. But it's a logical fallacy to say that in the first place. But also it's like doing long distance running. At some point you will get what they call a stitch. You know, when you get that pain, you feel like you can't go any further and you're starting to really struggle. But if you get through that stitch, you'll find that you can actually run a lot further. Yeah. And in the same way, with the way they're deliberately making the political system chaotic, a lot of people will feel like, you know, oh, well, we just got to vote for the right people. It's like, no, stick to your guns. Don't get involved. Eventually, it will be so obvious to the majority of people that this style of governance will just be faded away. It will de-evolve itself. Because the public will see the reality of, like, look, it doesn't matter what we vote for or what we petition the government for, the same shit keeps happening. So therefore, it's just, well, no, stop voting for it. Just go and sort the shit out for yourself. You know, go and do other things that are not feeding into that political infrastructure, because it doesn't lead anywhere. You know, the political bullshit is like the stitch you feel. Yeah, they keep insisting that, look, you'll die if we go away. You can't exist without us.
Well, absolutely. Look at this. 28% of EU voters said they believe that war between EU member states would be possible. Yeah? A great load of people believe Europe would collapse in the next 10 to 20 years. I don't know who writes this. What the fuck is it?
Yeah.
GQ or something. QS.com.
Yeah, see, that's feeding that Hegelian process where they're trying to give people the impression that the concept of the European superstate is going to fall apart because all of a sudden now everybody wants to be nationalistic, and look how popular it is to be nationalistic and all that kind of shit. It's like you look at the mechanisms, the things that happen in the bureaucracy of how the grouping of the European nations is being run, then everything is still heading full steam towards a European superstate. So no matter what your politicians like Farage is stomping around going, yeah, nationalism, we're going to Brexit, where we'll be independent. The bureaucracy and the legislation is still headlong going towards a superstate.
I mean, people were winning up to this point, yeah?
Yeah.
Up to
That's debatable, I think.
2015, the vote was just going down every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. And it's just rocketed back up. That's actually belief that it's worth voting to get out.
Yeah. They've been convinced of that kind of scarcity principle. I think we talked about this the other week. Yeah, they've been convinced that if they don't get involved, it's their last chance. It's their last chance. It's their last chance. And that's put like the fear of loss into people, such that they've gone running. Oh, yeah, I better vote in this one, otherwise it'll all be fucked up. It already is all fucked up. They're just managing the chaos.
Well, it worked wonderfully in America, didn't it?
Yeah.
The fear factor. Oh no, I have to vote for Trump.
Yeah, but Hillary would be worse. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we've sort of touched on some things that you found useful or inspirational, inspiring, whatever. And if you haven't, then maybe you should have done something else instead. Yeah, there's plenty of other things you could be doing, but you decided to come and listen to us talking about stuff. So thank you for giving us your attention for a bit. I've got a swig of coffee. Thank you for tuning in. And there's loads of chat again. I'm just scrolling up the chat room. Having a quick, I think I can actually, it's allowed me to scroll all the way back to the beginning. Cool. Linda Cloud, hello. Dave Iron, hello. And Dottie, hello, Tony. Dot, formerly known as the artist, non-violent extremist. And some Tathro, hello. And Paula B, hello. I think, I'm not sure if you've already gone to bed now, Paula, but thanks for joining in. Thanks for chatting in the chat box. And Plankton Breath, hello. And scrolling down. I know, well, I know, I'm pretty certain that there's always going to be somebody I miss out by mistake while I'm trying to scroll. Otakuzi Prikusa? I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, but hello. Roberto, hello. Yeah, it could be worse. We got Trump visiting. You wait until he starts dancing with Boris. That's going to be amusing. Maybe not. The blonde-haired, crazy people all getting together in one place could be risky. And Iman Pudama, hello. Thanks for joining in. I'm just scrolling down, looking at names at the moment, really. I'm not reading all the text. I'm sort of skim reading little bits here and there in case I catch something. Andy Manchester, hello. Yeah, I'll put those links in there. Check them out if you want to. A new being, hello. Thanks for joining us, folks, and joining in. Apple Charlotte, hello, hello. And I know I saw some other Alan McVicker, hello. Hope you're doing well, Al. Check out his singing. He's got a fantastic voice. Go and check out his channel. He does some karaoke videos every now and then. And he has got a brilliant voice. Yeah.
If anybody's into astrology, this guy does a good monthly forecast. Yeah, Rick Levine. Yeah, and he says the most important astrological event 2019 is in January 10th, 2020, which means basically that's how long it takes for Saturn and Pluto to conjunct. Yeah, and it's going towards a conjunction even now, but then it's going to stop as Saturn goes retrograde and Pluto goes retrograde. Saturn won't actually catch up to Pluto until like January 10th next year. But, you know, it's such a big conjunction that it rules the whole year, pretty much. This guy is really good.
Interestingly, that sort of connecting for me in the sense of like the way this year seems to be quite important in so many things coming to a close and being changed. So like a chapter change, that's how I've described it before, yeah. So this kind of long conjunction could explain that, you know, many things are coming to a close and then new things getting opened up. And hello, Groove Dodger. I saw you as I got to the scrolling down to the bottom of the chat. So thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks for listening in. Hopefully we said something or passed on some information or ideas that you can at least find helpful. Don't believe all the bullshit, but don't believe that everything is shit either. It's not. Try and keep abreast of what's going on, but, you know, don't kill yourself trying to keep up with everything, because there's an infinite reality of information and stuff going on out there. So, yeah, keep thinking, keep talking.
Well, when you said is there an alternative Bilderberg, I thought to myself, well, no, of course not. Because the good people don't want to be in just one group and control the world from that one group. Yeah, I mean, you know, everybody wants to rule the world, but, you know, when it comes to solutions, people naturally clump in small groups. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's nothing to tell anybody else about, because the people who are involved, the people who matter, are the ones already involved and doing it.
That's a good point, actually. In terms of correspondence, if the Bilderberg is a big gathering of super important people, then yeah, the sort of opposite to that would be lots of smaller meetings of supposedly not important people. So yeah, decentralizing again, isn't it? Huh?
Yeah, I mentioned Hound Dog again. Guy, he comments a lot on rightish wing politics without being full on Trump supporter. He made a video the other week saying that gardening is the most political message you can send. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And it was good, you know. And he's not doing that many videos these days. Yeah, he's cut down a bit because he's in his garden. Yeah, so much of the time. So yeah, that's one way.
That's a major point as well, which I think I had in my notes as just the one line: the nature balancer. When I was talking about the remedy, I getting back into the middle ground, that's one of the reasons why nature and being out in nature, reconnecting with nature, insert cliche phrase here, but hopefully people get the point, yeah? It's always good for you in many different ways. It gives you that sense of balance again. And I can quite happily argue that some of that effect that many people report, you know, that kind of anecdotal story of, oh, you know, I spent some time out in the countryside, I went camping, or I went and stayed in a cottage somewhere or something like that, and I felt so much better afterwards. That's because you're away from a lot of the saturation of frequencies that are all over anywhere that has been heavily urbanized. So the cities, the towns, even the smaller villages have got, you know, so many antennas stacked around them, or the cell phone antennas or Wi-Fi antennas or blah, 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 blah. You get out in the countryside away from a lot of that infrastructure, and you can sense the energy of the natural world around you. And that natural world is natural. So your body is more attuned to it, and it gives you that sense of refreshment because you're not being bombarded by all these artificially created frequencies.
Oh man, I had a really strange, very, very on topic experience today. Yeah, went to a park when I just come back from the countryside to plant some seeds. Yeah, and I was actually in a town, so I had a water tap. So I went to get some water, yeah, and clean up a bit. And this woman sitting on a bench, yeah, she's giving me a bit of a dirty look, like, because I'm obviously homeless. And while cleaning with the water and that, I could hear the birds singing in the trees. This is a town that's outside of Barcelona, and you know, it's quite nice. There's birds everywhere, yeah. And I was listening to the birds as I'm washing, you know, and I just knew in that moment, because the birds are sounding so happy, that this woman wasn't listening to the birds. Yeah. She's not listening to what they're saying, yeah? Because if she had, she wouldn't have been out giving angry looks to people, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, listen to the birds when you're out, yeah? They do say things. It's a bit hard to understand what they're saying, but you can understand, you know, you can get the gist of it.
If one of them tells you that he's Chavez, just believe him. Just give him a sunflower seed and say, yes, you are.
Quickly, or it'll keep on insisting. I am Chavez, I am Chavez, I am Chavez.
Okay, anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for joining in, right? Thanks again to everyone listening and tuning in. And we'll catch you again soon. Check out Wednesday night on Reality Chat channel, and check out Steve to Goose on Saturday night. And then I'll be back again Monday. And I'm sure there'll be lots of other stuff in between. So take care, folks. Catch you again soon.